Commissioners, citizens, I am Dr. Terry Johnson. I'm a dentist. I grew up here many years ago. My people have lived here since before the Civil War, and have a good bit of history. I know a lot of what goes on in our community. I'm a product of Sparta High School, which of course no longer exists. Graduated in 1957. Went off to Wake Forest 3 years, in Carolina Dental School 4 years. Came back home. There was no dentist here when I came. Most of those 40-odd years, I think I'm in my 48th year now. Most of those years, over half of them, I've been the only dentist in this county. I've done my best to serve the needs, the health needs of the county and my area. I think the hospital is a very important institution for our citizens and for our community, and any way you want to look at it. I can remember when there wasn't a hospital at all. Probably most of you came. But I can remember when it was a grassy field, and I think the Lucas family had a farm home on it. Dr. Burchote owned the land, and I think he gave it 5 acres to the hospital when it was first formed. In fact, Dr. Burchote delivered my mom when she was born in 1919 in her own home. But at any rate, I support the hospital. Both my sons have been born there. But it's not a perfect story because I'll tell you what happened when there wasn't a hospital. When my grandmother, May Maxwell, was in a cherry tree picking cherries. She was actually canning for the Baptist Orphanage. And she fell, broke her back. There was no hospital here then. She was taken to Elkin. There was a hospital there. There was very little treatment for such injuries in those years, and she died about 3 months later. I never knew her. My brother Johnny Johnson was in the class of 1970 here in Alleghany High, and after a football game one evening, and September the 13th, 1969, he was taking his date back to Galax. Didn't round the curve down 18. They had a car wreck. They were trapped, and we got a call. Went down, and there was no way to get them out. We didn't have a rescue squad. We ended up getting 3 rescue squads from surrounding counties. There was no way to we could take him back to Alleghany Memorial because there was no doctor in the ER at that time. So he was taken to Galax and was dead on arrival. And so was his date. But at any rate, this gives you some background where I'm coming from. I found or thought about a year ago that the hospital probably was having some financial problems because I don't know of any other institution that wasn't. So I went to the chair of the board and asked him if I might attend a hospital board meeting. He first said yes, and then later after he talked to the administrator overruled him and said, no, Dr. Johnson can attend one of our meetings. So I said, well, I don't understand that because all I'm interested in is helping the hospital. But I'm not interested in fighting, so I didn't take it any further than that. And then, of course, another dealing I had with the administrator of the hospital was several years ago. There was a county-wide committee formed to help me find another dentist to come to Alleghany because, of course, I've practiced for a long time and we need backup. The administrator of the hospital was a key part of that committee. I worked openly and completely unselfishly with the committee. At that time, I had been mentoring a dental student in Carolina, Dr. Ashley Weeks at that time. And so I introduced Dr. Weeks to the committee, and told her who she should contact in the power structure of our county, and asked her to see if she couldn't get their support so that she could come here. And of course, fortunately, she did. The point of all of this is that the administrator of the hospital was working with me at that time, but he did not give me the courtesy of doing the opposite. No, he was going to help me if I shared personal financial information and practice information with him. But if I wanted to help the hospital and ask for any financial information, then it's not to be served. So because of that, and because the hospital is obviously in trouble, I thought that I'd better come and share some questions to you. I sent a letter to the editor of the Alleghany News last week. I assume most of you have read it. It was meant to address a problem. We do not know how we can solve problems unless we address them, unless we recognize their problems and try to quantify them and evaluate them and analyze them. Then we can come up with rational conclusions and solutions that will stand the test of time. In other words, what we need here is not a Band-Aid. We need some probable surgery here and some post-operative care that will make sure we have a hospital for the future and for the long-term future. Some of the questions I think that need to be answered is, does the hospital need an audit? It was in the Alleghany News this past week about our New River Behavioral Health Agency, the problems that they've had. They've had several audits, the way I read it. They had one of their own, and then they had financial problems. Then they had another audit by another group to try to find out where the money went. And now the state agency that oversees such says that those two audits don't work, we need a third one. We need something that's impartial and accurate, that will stand the test of third-party examination. And I think that's what exactly we need now with the hospital. There's too many questions out there that I don't have the answer to, and I don't think y'all have the answer to. Some of those questions are, is the hospital board meetings, are they open to the public? Is there a violation of law for the hospital board to keep the public from attending any of their meetings? Well, I did a couple of hospital board representatives meet privately behind closed doors with you gentlemen. Unless it was to share information that was to be potentially embarrassing. And usually that's the kind of information that's really critical if we want to solve problems. I'm in the health service business, and being a professional, the way I approach problems is I get to the heart of it. You've got to get to the cause. We doctors call it etiology. If you don't get to the etiology or the cause of problems, like let's say with something simple, relatively simple, like a toothache, if you don't get to the cause of it, you can't treat it. You won't treat it successfully. But if you want to solve a problem, you've got to get to the heart of it. So, again, I think that's a symptom that there is information that the hospital board is not sharing publicly to the community. How are the hospital board directors appointed or selected? What's their term limit? What is quorum paid to management? I assume the management organization that manages the hospital. What are they paid to manage it or mismanage it? Looks like it's mismanagement with me. How long is the contract that quorum has with the hospital? Is it really, I have actually heard one lady in this county who carries a good bit of responsibility and experience, and it's her understanding that quorum owns the hospital, not the management group, they own it. And they tell us what to do. What are the responsibilities and the authority of quorum and the Alleghany Memorial Hospital Board of Directors? What's their relationship? Why does the hospital employ 169 employees, I believe it was in the newspaper, to care for an average daily patient load of between 10 and 15 patients, sometimes less than that. That's a number we need. What is the average daily admission or population of patients in the hospital? What number does the hospital need in order to break even? I don't know what it is. What's the minimum amount of income the hospital needs to break even? Is it $100,000 a month? Is it $500,000 a month? What is it? What's the shortfall between what they need to break even and what they have coming in? Again, what I'm interested in is what's the long-term solution here? What are the various categories of income for Alleghany Memorial Hospital and their totals for each of the last 3 years? Because since it's been an aberration here of our economy of the last 3 years, you can't just take the past year and make a decision for the future, and because this past year has been so different and so depressed. We need to go back at least 3 years, maybe 4. And these categories are not only income but expenses. We need to know what are the different categories of expenses and what's the different categories of income, because we need to minimize our expenses and maximize our income. What percentage of Alleghany County population actually use the hospital? I've never known that number. I've had the same experience in my own practice. Before I encouraged Dr. Von Key to come here years ago to practice dentistry, I wondered, is there enough dental need? I know there's enough dental need, but there's enough dental demand for services for a second dentist. What I did was I went to the telephone book and I numbered every number in the telephone book. And then I took a random number distribution table from an old course in statistics, which I didn't particularly like, I can tell you that. Very boring stuff. But it came in handy that time, and I picked out some random numbers and sent out about 200 letters to people in the county. And from that questionnaire, I had about a 40 to 50% return, and in the ones that returned, I found out that about 60% of the dental patients were leaving Alleghany County for dental care. That meant only about 40% were staying. And so that is an open question there as to just, I lost my place here. So the percentage of Alleghany County of the population that actually using the hospital is really important. The percentage of people that stay here for care is important. Some people leave. I don't know how many, but I know there's some, and you don't have to look far to find them. I don't have to ask questions. In fact, I was talking with a leading businessman not long ago, here a couple of weeks ago, and I was saying, what do you think about our hospital problems? And he said, well, I just don't know, but he said, I've told my wife that if anything happens to me, do not take me to our hospital. Take me to Galax or Elk. And that's a bad symptom. I don't like that because I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's warranted. And I think it can be countered because we have good care here. And what we have to do is find out what's going on. And I don't know how you can find out without addressing the problem. So can we or should we try to identify the reasons that people go elsewhere? I think we should. How are you going to find out? How are patient complaints handled? I like to be proactive when I run into problems. So I run into a problem, I'm going to call somebody and talk to them about it. I'm not going to let it sweep it under the rug. How can the economic development of Alleghany County be stimulated if the management of the hospital is just incompetent? I mean, it's a vital part of our community, and if we want to attract business into our community and hire folks, which we all want, one of the things they're going to want is a healthy financial services. So if we want to have a healthy financial economic future, I think we need a hospital here. If we want that, we've got to find out what's going on. We have an opportunity now to work together and build a consensus of public opinion to support the hospital. not only help it survive, but help it thrive. I think the possibilities are good for us in the future. But we've got to work together and achieve a consensus of working together. We've got to find out what the problems are. Again, you cannot solve problems if you don't know what they are, or unless you know what some symptoms are and you treat a symptom here and a symptom there. That does not solve the problem. And to finish, as I started out with, I mentioned about the audit that New River Behavioral Healthcare is having to go through right now. And I think we can short-circuit all the grief that they've had to endure and are going to continue to endure. Let's just find out what the facts are and get it settled. I appreciate y'all listening to me. You've been very patient. Does anybody wish to ask me a question?
No, we don't.
Thank you.
Anyone else?